The movie begins with the Vikings attempting to capture a beast that resides in a lake called the Eye of Odin 1,000 years ago. The Viking, who appears to be leading his warriors on this daunting mission, has brought his daughter along. She seems to be the sole voice of reason amongst them, consistently urging them to prioritize their safety and turn back. But unfortunately, her father disregards her warnings and chooses to press on. We witness the expression of fear on the soldiers after they send sheep floating on a raft. Fast forward 1,000 years later, we find Sigurd greeting his children in the morning. He'd been organizing his files for an upcoming presentation at work, and he notices both his kids are dressed up, and he inquires if there's a special occasion to celebrate. His son Brog informs him that his sister Ragnhild will be performing a song later on. Sigurd assures them that he'll be present and heads off to work. His boss, who seems to be unhappy about his late arrival, advises him not to get carried away during his presentation to the investors and instructs him to stick strictly to the facts. Sigurd presents his findings about the Oseberg ship to the investors, and he provides a brief explanation that suggests the likelihood of Viking presence in Finmark 1,000 years ago. After concluding his presentation, the investors express dissatisfaction with the limited scope of the findings. At this point, Sigurd deviates from his boss's instructions and resorts to the findings that he believes are true but can't provide evidence for. So he proceeds to showcase the tools that were found buried alongside Asa, the Viking daughter, and he places particular emphasis on the runes discovered, which intriguingly describes mankind's obliviousness. He also mentions how they didn't make any attempts in informing the coming generations of what they knew, but have written the word Ragnarok, which means the end of the world. But the investors find this unimpressive and delusional, and as a result, they decide to terminate their cooperation and leave from the meeting. While discussing this matter with his boss afterwards, the boss brings up the topic of Sigurd's wife passing and gives him advice to move forward, noting that it's been 6 years since her death. After work, Sigurd sits in his car, deep in contemplation about his research, and suddenly he realizes that he should have already picked up his children from school. Filled with a sense of urgency, he rushes to the school only to discover his daughter, filled with anger, waiting for him with her brother. At night, Sigurd engages in a conversation with his son about the dating profile that he set up for Sigurd. Just as they were talking, Ragnhild enters the room and interrupts and asks about their plans for the summer holiday. Sigurd suggests that they're going to the cabin, which further frustrates Ragnhild since her friends are going to the Mediterranean. Later, Sigurd is taken aback by the unexpected arrival of Alan, a colleague from work. To Sigurd's surprise, Alan brings along a rune stone. Intrigued, Sigurd begins deciphering the markings on the stone and realizes that it's actually a map leading to a significant location, which is the Eye of Odin, where the Oseberg Vikings once been. Sigurd reaches a conclusion that this might be the place where the Vikings concealed their treasures and guarded their secrets. The following morning, Sigurd attempts to persuade Ragnhild to accompany him and Alan and go to Finmark. But she refuses, asserting that she would be bored during the trip. He makes several attempts to convince her by highlighting the exciting aspects of the journey, but she remains unconvinced. And finally, he appeals to her to do it for Brock's sake, and after considering his plea, she reluctantly agrees. After their arrival, they rendezvous with Alan's assistant Elizabeth and provide her with an update on their findings. Soon after, they meet their local guide, Leif, and with Leif, a grumpy old tour guide, and Elizabeth assisting them, Alan and Sigurd embark on their quest to locate the bottomless lake that is the Eye of Odin. After wandering across the terrain for some time, they come across a border that's been constructed ages ago to divide Norway from the Soviet Union. Leif informs them that the area had been officially designated as a no man's land, and furthermore, he reveals that no person has ventured into the area for the past 50 years. Despite the mixture of curiosity, uncertainty, and apprehension provoked by the sight of the border, they make the bold decision to breach its barriers and press onward. Leif inquires about their intended destination, but Alan declines to respond, stating that they have already compensated him for his services and owe him no further explanation. Due to the mosquito-infested forest, Elizabeth sprays insect repellent on Ragnhild's skin and hair. In the midst of all this, Elizabeth asks about Ragnhild's mother and learns that she passed away. After a while, they finally arrive at the only lake nearby, Odin's Eye. They traverse the lake with a raft, and upon reaching the opposite shore, immediately begin their search for anything that could provide useful information for their research. They only come across empty casings, which clearly couldn't have been used by the Vikings. Ragnhild suggests that they return home, but Sigurd refuses to give up. While Sigurd and the others take a break, his children wander around. As he was discussing his wife's death with Elizabeth, he suddenly hears Brog's voice calling out to him. Intrigued, he follows the sound and discovers Brog inside a cave. Sigurd cautiously enters the cave and hears a mysterious noise emanating from its depths. He promptly alerts everyone about it, and they go inside this cave. As Sigurd secures the rope around his waist, preparing himself to jump, Elizabeth mocks him for not tying it properly. She pulls him closer and fixes the rope for him, creating a moment of tension between them that puts a smile on Runhild's face. They resume their search, exploring the vast cave, and amidst their fascination, Alan makes a remarkable discovery. A partially burnt Viking helmet, and with his bare hands, he carefully excavates it from the mud and proudly presents it to Sigurd and the others. The find exhilarates Sigurd and Alan, as there only has been one find of a Viking helmet throughout Northern Europe so far. While they excitedly share the discovery with Elizabeth and the rest of the group, Brog wanders off once again and stumbles upon what appears to be a small pond. Intrigued, he reaches in and retrieves what looks like a large brown egg and places it inside his bag before leaving. Led by Brog's voice, Leif arrives at the same location and steps onto another egg while attempting to approach the pond. Unfazed, he wipes off the sticky viscous fluid from his foot, thinking that it was nothing. When Leif returns, he discovers Alan and Sigurd meticulously cleaning and labeling their findings. He hears them talk about how it might be hard to transport them to the museum in Oslo, and Leif emphasizes that Finmark should not relinquish these treasures, implying that they should leave everything behind. Sigurd erupts in anger, accusing Leif of not comprehending the significance of their discoveries, and Leif pretends to agree, but suddenly brandishes his rifle, pointing it directly at Sigurd. He threatens them, demanding that they hand over the labeled artifacts, and Leif ascends back up the rope, taking everything that they found, and he unties the rope to prevent them from following him. He proceeds to board the raft and tries to cross the lake, and as he paddles, he once again notices the sticky liquid on his shoe, and he attempts to cleanse it with the lake's water. This action triggers a creature dwelling within the lake, and the creature suddenly lunges at the raft and viciously attacks Leif and causes his death. Meanwhile, Elizabeth skillfully ascends the cave's walls using her bare hands and helps the rest of the group up. When they reach the surface, they realize that Leif is nowhere to be found, leading them to the conclusion that he's escaped with the artifact that they discovered. Later, Alan and Sigurd engage in a devastating conversation about recent events. Alan retrieves the skull that they found in the cave and begins to examine it closely. To their astonishment, they notice a tooth that appears to be artificially attached to the skull, resembling the beast's teeth. Recognizing this as a significant lead, and they decide to return to the cave the following morning. Advancing deeper into the cave, they stumble upon a cluster of skeletons, revealing a startling discovery. At the same time, the egg Brog had taken earlier hatches while they were sleeping in the old car that they found. Brog and his sister wake up to its sounds, and they try to wake Elizabeth, but she couldn't hear them. Brog assumes that the creature inside the egg is hungry and offers it a french fry. As it emerges from underneath the bed, we see that it has the size of a fully grown snake, and it's got dark gray skin and multiple sharp teeth. When it starts to scream, Elizabeth finally wakes up and swiftly captures the creature and puts it in a small container. In the cave, Sigurd presents Alan with a new hypothesis. He suggests that the animal heads that they'd observed on the pillars might actually represent real creatures that existed in the past. As they explore further, they come across another skeleton within the previous pond. Unlike the Viking skeletons, this one appears to be more recent, no older than 50 years. Suddenly, a loud and jarring growl echoes through the cave, causing them to quickly take cover. Peering from their hiding spot, they catch a glimpse of a fearsome beast, prompting them to hastily retreat to the surface, concerned for the safety of the children who may be at risk from the creature. The contained beast that Elizabeth had captured relentlessly pounds against the walls of the container, attempting to break free. Strangely, the vibrations caused by its violent struggles are transmitted through a rope that's inexplicably tied to the car and extended into the water. Sensing these vibrations, the submerged beast starts pulling on the rope. Just as they try to exit the car, the door unexpectedly shuts and locks from the outside. Unfortunately, Alan and Sigurd arrive just in time to witness the situation, and they act swiftly and they rescue them when the car was a few meters away from drowning. While searching for weapons to aid them in escaping from the beast, Alan stumbles upon the container that had the small creature that they previously captured. Recognizing its potential usefulness, he hides it inside his bag. They devise a plan to shoot the rope across the lake, hoping it will securely attach to the tree to the other side, enabling them to zipline their way across. The initial attempt attempt with Alan and the children go smoothly. However, when Sigurd attempts to cross, his harness breaks, leaving him stuck in a dangerous position. Just as he was about to fall, Elizabeth reaches him and secures him to the rope. The beast, lurking beneath the water, senses their presence and starts moving toward them. When it attacks, it narrowly misses them, but the rope cuts, causing them to fall inside the lake. Before the creature can reach them, Alan shoots at it, creating a distraction that allows them to swim across safely. As they make their way back, Sigurd asks about the creature in Alan's bag. When Alan tries to downplay it, they suddenly hear the creature growl, and moments later, witness trees collapsing behind them. Fueled by fear, they enter a bunker and close it. They begin searching for an alternative exit, while the beast relentlessly tries to force open the door, but their attempts become unsuccessful. In their despair, Reinhild breaks down in tears and blames Sigurd for the situation. Amidst their despondency, Reinhild asks her father to explain a ruin that he'd copied in his journal. He shares the tale of the Vikings who'd ventured here many years ago and had met their demise due to their failure to heed the warnings. Sigurd then notices ventilation pipes running along the ceiling and proposes that they might lead them to an escape route. The group follows the pipes, eventually discovering another door on the roof. Opening the door, Alan emerges first. However, before the others can follow, the little beast inside the bag starts making noises, catching Sigurd's attention. He investigates the bag and uncovers what Alan had been hiding, and as Sigurd attempts to persuade Alan to leave it behind, Alan mentions how they've been laughed at for 6 years and how he wants to fix that by taking it home. When Sigurd finally decides to hand him the bag, the beast outside pulls and kills him. It then smashes its head against the door, causing the roof to collapse and fall down on them. Reinhild and Brag manage to escape from the crash and hide, while Sigurd and Elizabeth lie unconscious on the ground. Brag walks alone, calling out to his father, when his sister covers his mouth, pulling him into the locker, and tells him to stay silent. The beast slowly approaches the locker as both siblings shed tears, praying that it doesn't discover them and just passes by. They cautiously exit the locker once it was out of sight, and just when they thought they might have evaded it, the creature sneaks up from behind and starts chasing them. After running and screaming for their father to come, the beast corners them and their father regains consciousness and he starts moving toward them. He screams to divert the beast's attention, and the beast notices him and slowly slithers in his direction. Sigurd carefully retrieves the baby beast from the container and offers it to the beast. It momentarily bows, allowing the baby to slide onto its face, and then leaves Sigurd alone. And with their safety now assured, the children run to their father and hug him, and they all gather around Elizabeth, who was still unconscious on the ground. They wake her up and make their way out of the bunker, and finally, the movie ends with them standing far away from the lake, realizing how grateful they are to have escaped alive. They embrace each other in relief and continue their journey back home.